Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to this particular webinar. We are allowing a few minutes for people to join, and we'll start very shortly. Just allowing one more minute, probably for people to join, and then we will start very, very shortly. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar organized by the UK Telecommunication Innovation Network, the leading organization for connecting the telecommunication ecosystem and telecommunication and future communications ecosystem in the UK across industry, industry and academia. This is the third webinar in the series that we will be presenting to you today from a group of participants that play a key role in the current efforts that the UK is undertaking in the development of future capabilities in future communication technologies as a core critical infrastructure component for the UK in the digital and in the world for the digital era. My name is Dritan Kaleshi. I am Director of Technology for 5G and Digital Infrastructure at Digital Catapult, and I'm also one of the founders of UK Telecommunication Innovation Network, and I'll be the moderator and the MC for the webinar today. We've got five excellent participants in the panel, five excellent speakers. To borrow a term used typically for the industry, these are captains of the academic research in the UK in the domain of distributed systems, computing, and future communications. And I'll ask them to introduce them shortly. These people are leading key activities across the UK landscape that has been funded by the UK government as part of the initiatives on the Open Network Programme and building future capabilities in networks and infrastructure across the telecommunication system, from optical communications to network management and everything in between, from terrestrial to non-terrestrial networks, from semiconductors for telecoms to artificial intelligence, AI native networks. They are currently delivering programs that has been funded by the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology in the UK under, as I said, the Open Network programs, and being managed and funded through the Engineering and Physics Research Council, as well as through directly other mechanisms within the government. All of these activities, which has been going on for the past 2.5 years in the UK, will be present in Mobile World Congress in the UK pavilion, to which you are invited cordially to participate. And where we will be organizing tours and walks, which, if I am not mistaken, and I'll be checking with my team, there will be 2 tours organized on Monday and Tuesday on the week of the Mobile World Congress, on the 3rd to the 6th of March. And then it will continue potentially with the third tour or a visit across all of the different booths that represent UK future capabilities at Mobile World Congress this year. Today's webinar is the last in the series of three that we have, and it talks about the building blocks for effective future networks research and development in the UK. In the past 8 years, the UK, like many other countries in the world, has particularly focused to revamp its capabilities in terms of both enabling and leveraging advanced communication infrastructure for digitalization and for digital transformation, as well as supporting better the development, the research and the development and the innovation space for the technology itself, for delivering better, more secure, more reliable, and more resilient communication infrastructure as delivering what we all understand very, very clearly now, the underpinning. It's the underpinning capability, the underpinning component of critical national infrastructure. It's the thing that keeps everything else ticking over and working. As part of this, there has been very significant investment from the government, and the speakers today will walk you through that particular through their activities and give you a bit of a hint of what you might be able to experience when you talk to them or when you meet their teams at Mobile World Congress. Without further ado, because the focus is on them and on their work, I will invite all of the participants to come on board. So Julie, Alistair, Harold, Rahim, and Howard, in no particular order, apart from the one that I have on my screen. And the way that we'll be running this today is that I'll be asking everyone to introduce themselves. They will do much better justice with humility to themselves than I can do in my probably overdoing ways. And then we will go in about 3 or 4 sections with some specific questions focusing on structures we have for research, standardization, sustainability of research, and the skills space. And in the end, we will have space for some Q&A from the audience, which we encourage very, very strongly for you to pass. Please post your questions as you continue, as you hear things, and we'll pick up those questions towards the end to answer. So without further ado, I'll start in the order that I have them in the screen. Julie, I'll start with you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tristan. How are you doing all? I'm Julie McCann. I'm the director of the Imperial School of Convergence Science and Space Security and Telecommunications. But the reason I'm talking to you today is because I also am very lucky to head up the Communications Hub for Empowering Distributed Cloud Computing, Applications and Research, or CHEDR for short. And the CHEDR Hub is interested in a lot of the conversations we have around AI and a lot of conversations around joint sensing and communications.
Thank you very much, Julie. And Alistair.
Hello, I'm Alistair Burr. I'm Professor of Communications at the University of York, but again, I'm here because I lead the YORAN project, which is funded by Department for Science, Innovation and Technology. YORAN does what it says on the tin. It stands for Yorkshire Open RAN. So we are researching Open RAN technologies, and we are mostly based within Yorkshire or the north of England. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alistair. Rahim?
Oh, hello, good day. I'm Rahim Tafizuri, Professor of Mobile and Satellite Communications, Director of Institute for Communication Systems, as well as Director of 5G and 6G Innovation Center at the University of Surrey. I'm here for 2 reasons. One is DCIT-funded national program is called TUDOR. Another one is doctoral training center, which is called FORT, which is for upskilling the future graduates. Talking about TUDOR consists of 25 partners, 17 industry, and 8 academia. And the main objective is to integrate in a form of unifying between space and terrestrial networks. So amongst the many research areas that we've been doing is unifying the two segments that we call future telecom and 6G, is using the cloud native architecture for this integration and unification. We carry out a study on techno-economic analysis of integration between space and terrestrial systems, all the way to intelligent algorithms for management of these three-dimensional networks, and even longer term sort of research areas like semantic communication and sensing. I'll be more than happy to discuss this during this session.
Thank you, Rahim. Harold.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Harald Haas. I am the Van Eck Professor of Engineering here at the University of Cambridge. And I'm here to represent two things. One is the hub on networks of networks. It's called the Driving the Ultimate Connectivity, or TITAN in short. And TITAN is essentially a multi-partner sort of a project with 16 UK universities where we drive research on the integration of all network elements from wired to wireless to satellite and also to quantum. And I am very happy again to expand on that later on. And I'm also here, and that's one of the activities we've been set up with Julie, Dominic, and Dimitra Siminotou, is a federation of the different hubs. So the hubs are not in isolation, they work together towards a goal that is called translation. So we want to translate and connect the fundamental research and the translational research with our industry communities as well as with our commercial communities to drive innovation, drive the ecosystem. With that, thank you, and more later.
Thank you very much, Harold. And Howard.
Thank you. So Professor Howard Ben, I run my own consultancy company, Ben Consulting Limited, but I'm here today on behalf of UKTIN. So myself and Louis Lopez co-chair the Standards Expert Working Group within UKTIN, and I also sit on the advisory board as well.
Thank you very much, Howard. And I must say that I realize I am the only non-professor in this particular illustrious cast of people, which makes me quite pleased to effectively be able to ask the questions that I'll be asking now. It's quite common. So for me, as I said that in my opening, the UK has invested. UK has always had a very, very, very strong research base, an academic research base, and in the past, a long past industrial research base in telecommunication, future network communications, and also the interface between compute and communications as such, as well as in computer science. What we have seen in the past 4 or 5 years, it has been the emergence through very directed funding of a fostering of a much better coordination and closer collaboration between academic areas in what many people call multidisciplinary kind of research. And those are some of the building blocks, the specific building blocks that we want to effectively address today. So I'll start with you, Julie, and then continue with Harold. What is, from your perspective, the structure around the UK's cutting-edge research and development in this particular area, and in particular how it is becoming increasingly multidisciplinary, where Cheddar effectively is playing? Julie?
Yeah. Thank you very much. So I find next generation communication systems very much more exciting than they've ever been, because we're starting to see it sort of shape in a way that we are bringing more fellow travelers, let's say, into the community. And so, for example, with across the telecoms hubs that we have the spectrum of people from physicists all the way through to computer scientists, people interested in the socio-technical side, all coming together to bring to give birth to this next new generation. And so specifically within Cheddar, for example, there's a lot of emphasis on bringing talent in around new ways to optimize these kinds of systems, to better understand the complexity of these systems. And of course, a lot of this has been driven by AI and for AI as well. So what I'm trying to say there is, so for example, if we want to make the best use of resources, and that could be where we place processing in a multitude of multi-access edge systems, for example, where we optimize that processing in its entirety all the way across that, how it interacts with the system in situ where it is, and so it understands its radio environment and things like that. We're using a lot more AI based on machine learning based systems. And we're also getting a bit cleverer with that. So what we're starting to see is this system that we're bringing forth has more autonomy. And then there's questions around socio-technical questions around whether autonomy can be trusted, especially since it's very critical infrastructure. And so what we're starting to look at is people who look at those topics, and that's people who are interested in privacy. So for example, one part of 6G is joint sensing and communications. That means we can get very nosy very quickly using the network as a sensor. So we have to counter that with making sure that we have got privacy policies and privacy science involved in that. The code itself is quite much more agile. The systems are much more complex, which means something could go wrong when it joins the system in a more agile way. That means we have to look at things like, for example, verification. So we're now bringing in what would be normally theoretical computer scientists in to look at the verification of these systems. And also we're interested in people who are following and doing research in the very formalisms of trusted AI as a service. So for example, that would be people who have come from an AI background, who've not worked in telecommunications systems before, looking at how they can apply their knowledge to our kind of system and at the speeds that we want to expect from that kind of system. So it's an absolutely fantastically juicy world that we have now of really interesting problems for research.
Thank you very much, Julie. And for this particular very, very strong connection, multidisciplinary and collaboration between the universities. How do you think this is being addressed through governance structures, Harold?
Yeah, first of all, I need to say there are 4 hubs. Is Jeddah, Titan, Husk, and also Joiner. And overall, that encompasses about 25 UK universities leading in their respective fields, but also about 100 sort of researchers that are engaged in all the hubs. And the hubs are not operating in isolation and cooperate and coordinate work across. But importantly, the federation is looking beyond the fundamental research and does some translational elements, recognizing that the UK has been not fully capitalized on its research power in telecoms over the last sort of decades. And this is something that the change by basically four major mechanisms. One is really looking at contributions and engagement in standardization in a sensible way with industry. The other one is looking at sort of commercialization. So we have created an IPR pool that would allow sort of ideas to come into a kind of a shopping window, and then we have a qualification process to drive spin-out companies, early stage proof of concepts, and also minimum viable products. That is crucial. The other element that we have is sort of a coherent marketing, if you want, a one-stop shop to academic research in the UK through the FDH front door in order to foster international collaborations, because 6G and telecoms is by nature sort of an international, and we must not forget that. That is crucial, and then obviously skills and upskilling is important, and supported is this by the 3 sort of hubs, and primarily focusing on different research areas, but also the national platform for joint experimentation, which really allows the researchers to come and put their ideas at lower TRL level into a unified platform and lift the technology readiness level up, so that we can really gain a lot of insights into how theoretical things and semi-practical things work in a complete end-to-end network, and also to develop new practically anchored solutions that really feed the ecosystem. So this is a rough sort of the ideas. I could expand further if you'd like.
Thank you. And across the 4 hubs, Harold and Julie, how many universities participate?
I think Harold said around 25. I know, Harold, you've got 16. We have
We
now
have
10
we have,
because
we
we
have, we have
extended.
16, right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
25 universities across
Yeah, it's a fair amount. Yeah.
across the UK. It's the telecoms hubs as bringing together this early stage and with the lighthouse projects and effectively setting up early investigation, but bringing in the 4 points that you mentioned: standardization, commercialization, the pull through of the research into
that's right.
the real world. And then, of course, the international collaboration and the skills and training. Alistair, Rahim, and Howard, anything you want to add into that as part of the structures and the governance for undertaking this for delivering these kind of contributions in the UK?
Yeah, so just to quickly add the role of UKTIN here. So one of the purposes for UKTIN was to bring together academia with industry, and I think it's been very successful in doing that. So these projects can then feed into an industrial base to help grow the telecoms industry, create startups, but also to inform the large and the smaller players about what is going on in the world of academic research.
Following on from that, perhaps to say something about projects like YoRAN, which also includes Tudor and Reason, of course, which do directly incorporate industry into the project, so that there's sort of built-in collaboration from the very start of the work, which is a little bit different from how we as universities have been more used to operating in the past, and is very effective, I think, in making sure our research is relevant.
Thank you, Alistair and Rahim.
No, I just would keep it very briefly. I'm very happy, very pleased to see that hubs actually working with each other and also recognizing the importance of the IPR as well as standardization. This is something that standardization activity that we need to promote more, that there is an athlete from our research into the project. As mentioned, 25 partners, industry and academia. From day one, we asked our industry partners to train researchers as well as professors what is important for standards, what is important for IPR. And as a result of that, over the last 2 years, the partners collectively contributed more than 38 contributions to the standards with 3GPP as well as IETF. And some of them obviously had been already filed the patents and is going to the technical specification in release 20, which what is generally known as the 6G. So it is all very good activity going across the whole UK, and realizing there's standardization is complement the excellent world-leading research that academia is doing.
Thank you very much. And following from that, because both you and Howard mentioned and Harold mentioned standardization. So following from that and starting with Howard, importance of participation in standards. Telecoms have, telecommunications and future communications in general have always been driven by standards, be that in IEEE for Wi-Fi and for some fixed networks, the Ethernet, IDF for some of the for more of the internet protocols, and of course in 3GPP for the cellular domain, as well as many others. where do you see the connection, Howard, in between the work that we are doing at the moment in the UK? What is the importance in practicing standards? What are some of the challenges, and where do you see work that is currently being done across the landscape in the UK, both from a UKTIN perspective, but also through your collaboration with your academic colleagues?
Yeah, so as you rightly say, standards is at the heart of telecoms. I mean, it's the lifeblood that kind of takes all that innovation that we're doing in the universities, feeds it into the global standards process. And I think it's worth pointing out early on that it is a global standard. So we're in the world of telecoms where everything has to work together. And there's been a lot of emphasis over the last 20 years in 3GPP to create this, one standard so your phone works everywhere. And of course, it's a lot more than just your phone these days. We often kind of focus on 3GPP. It is obviously, one of the bigger organizations, vitally important. As Raheem just pointed out, we're just starting work on 6G. So in a couple of weeks' time, there's a meeting in Korea, a RAN workshop where they'll be discussing what the radio aspects of 6G may well look like. Very early days at this stage. But of course, as you pointed out, Dritten, that there are other standards activities. So, let's not forget things like security. Security is vitally important to all of us. And some of that is kind of up at the global level. Some of it is across Europe. ETSI have some security groups, and some of it is just in the UK. So we often forget about organizations like NICC, which work with all of the telecoms providers in the UK. And they've done a tremendous effort in cutting down the number of scam phone calls that we get. So there's a lot of work being going on there. I think as Julie pointed out a little bit earlier about AI, there's a massive space that is growing really quickly in how do we standardize AI? And what is it that we want to standardize? How do we make it safe? How do we make it secure? How do we protect privacy? And these discussions are going on right now. And I think the UK is really well placed to take part in those conversations. And the universities are already starting to focus. So I was at a meeting at Bath University recently, looking at AI standards. So, work is going on at the moment. We need to continue and to make sure that we translate all the academic research that we're doing into standards where it's appropriate.
Thank you very, very much. I think all of the Phone RC projects, which is the Yoran, Alistair, Tudor, Raheem, Reason, University of Bristol, as well as the hubs, Harold and Julie, all of you have standards-related activities. I think Alistair and Raheem, because your projects are more closely related to industry, would you want to kind of add from your perspective where you are coming? And then Harold and Julie, probably the way that you are looking in particular towards commercialization and what the importance of standardization is there. Alistair, let's start with you.
Yeah, indeed. And following on a bit from Howard, the 3GPP is very important, of course, but it's not the only game in town. Now, YoRAN, as the name suggests, is very much associated with Open RAN. And for us, the O-RAN Alliance is an important body to participate in. So I'll be going to Paris next week to join the face-to-face meeting and have been involved in some of the previous standardization activities in there. And then again, we as University of York have recently joined the AI RAN Alliance, which is again focused about the interaction of AI and the RAN. And we're also members of ETSI because the ETSI ISGs, industry specification groups, often provide a good way for smaller companies and universities to get involved in the standardization process without the huge overheads of being involved in the 3GPP meetings themselves.
Thank you, Alistair. And Rahim, you mentioned 38 standards contribution coming in the last 2.5 years, and of course some of them associated with patents, which of course show the importance. How much engagement are you seeing with the industry in those patents? In those standard contributions?
Yeah, first of all, we started off by training the researchers, even professors, academics, about what 3GPP standard or ETSI standard is about. And as a result of that, the importance of IPR, of course, part of the standards. As a result of that, collectively, most of the partners, industry, and academia, whenever they had something to contribute to the standards, we share that one with everybody and say that who wants to join and support, and industry and academia, they put the names up to it, and somebody attends the standards and present the idea and get more support from the other standards members. Our contribution to standard, as Alistair said, it is not only 3GPP, we also contributed to ETSI, we contributed to IETF as well. So it's not a standard, but we had a contribution to IETF. And as a result of that, in ETSI, we set up two industry specification group. One is on ISAC, integrated sensing and communication, and another one on reconfigurable intelligence surfaces. These are pre-standards activity that we get the community as a whole together to educate. That's the first thing. The second one, to come up with new technical approach and solutions until the standard is ready, then it can provide inputs to the standards. And we have, for example, on the ISAC, novel, innovative channel models for ISAC. Most of the channel models are for MIMO and for communication, whereas for ISAC, it doesn't such a thing doesn't exist. And many different contribution. So we realized from day one that standards and IPR is essential activity for any projects that we're doing and in UK.
Thank you very much. And then Harald, again, standards is one of the 4 pillars that you mentioned for all of the hubs.
That's right. Yeah, I think I need to perhaps say that, for example, some of the researchers in the hubs have already created ISGs within ETSI on, for example, RIS is Queen Mary University has been very active there. And also Imperial Bruno Klerksatz has just launched a new ISG on multi-user access technology. So there's a real activity ongoing right now within ETSI, for example. But what I like to add is sort of we have a standardization director within the Federation hubs, and he's going to the meeting in Korea, as you mentioned earlier. So we also have researchers within the hubs that could bring active contributions, new ideas into the standardization fora, and that includes 3GPP, IEEE, IETF, and others. Just to add that the way we are looking at this is really twofold. One is really to understand where the technology trends within standardization are going, and to feed that back into the research base so that the research can be aligned accordingly. And the second approach is really, as I said earlier, bringing ideas into the standardization fora, often in collaboration with our industry partners, because we need to be very realistic to make an impact in standardization. And given sort of the big companies that are playing there, we can't play the same level. We need to understand where are our niches, where can we strategically place our innovations into the various standardization fora. So there's a lot of strategic development going on as well, and putting the whole sort of activity on a realistic level, maximizing the impact we could achieve.
I purely because of time, and apologies, Julie, and I'll start with you in the next one. I want to move to the kind of the next session and the next topic, which is something that all of you will be very, very keen, but it's something about the sustainability of research and development, but in particular in the context of the UK, which has always had a world-class research in across the telecommunication systems, from photonics and optical device and communications up to the network management. But where we have seen a kind of a concentration of the industrial research away from the UK in the past kind of 10, 15 years. So opening up on the discussion for sustainability of R&D. So all of the work you are doing and which you and your teams will be taking some of that, the exemplars of that, to Mobile World Congress. How can we make that more sustainable? How can we connect it better with what kind of Harald touched upon and all of you also mentioned before in specific supporting both curiosity-driven research, but also addressing very, very specific strategic directions of work. Alistair, if I can start with you.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, so I need to say that I'm obviously speaking from a university perspective here, but also from a YORAN perspective. From the university perspective, there's a very perennial problem in the sustaining research, particularly in the comms engineering area, and getting impact from that, which obviously is what we're about, really. I mean, YORAN is actually very effective, and the other DSIT-funded projects in bringing industry and academia together. As I said, it really bakes in the the industry perspective into our research from the start. So we can focus it on industry concerns. Now, from YORAN perspective, the Yorkshire bit, we sit in a slightly different place from some of the other academic partners here in the north of England. I think that area has been viewed as a desert for, especially for the communications industry, but we've definitely found that that is really not the case. And there's really quite a cluster of innovation, especially in the RF area, with new companies and bringing out new products in our local area. But we're also wanting to push this further, and I'd like to mention one initiative we're bringing out to sustain our research and bring impact beyond the end of the project. We're kicking off something we call the Lab of the North, where the idea is to support, in particular, 5 and 6G research by our partners, with those based in the north of England. So we'll be offering services to customers as well as partners, giving research facilities and so on. And our partners, importantly, obviously include universities and both small and large industry, but also specialist services. So there are various bodies operating test beds that are useful for this, and also local government, which again are very interested in some of these technologies and again can provide bases to actually trial some of our technologies. So just to say where we are now, we're currently starting up this and hoping to go live offering services from August. So sort of watch this space, and obviously if you're interested and you're at MWC, do come to our stand, and that's one of the things you can talk about. I better pass over now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The concept of the Lab of the North and the comprehensive package of facilities and associated services, testbed and associated services, plus design for local authorities, is quite an interesting one, and something which I think has emerged only through because of what we have seen as very dedicated funding over the past 7 years. To be frank, I just wanted to flag as a personal comment, kudos to give the government kudos when they deserve it, and my God, they need it in some cases. So Julie, on the sustainability side, how do you see this, and in particular the trade-off between curiosity-driven research versus more strategically directed research?
Okay, so I think the best way to be sustainable is to have that mixed portfolio. I think that engaging in standards, engaging with users, engaging with industry and so on is a good way to get the so what of our research corrected. The point of our research is directed to the where it's needed, and it will have a future. On the other hand, I do think that we will not see step changes. We will not see the impressive new world research if we don't do fundamental work as well. I just think a mixed portfolio is a really nice way to keep the sustainability active, and it allows us to have that step change that maybe we need to bring things just that wee bit faster, better, more useful.
Thank you, Julie. And Rahim, anything from you on this?
No, I just want to add, I agree with everything that the panelists said, but I want to add one aspect to this. On the sustainability of research, as we saw in projects like Tudor and Reasons, and I think Yoran as well, working with industry is important. Contribution to the standard is important. But there is one specific aspect, which is interesting aspect and unique aspect of the DCIT funded project is like Tudor, Reason, and etc. It enables academia and industry to work on low TRL together. And whereas the funding from EPSRC or Innovate UK, it is for low TRL for academics or mid to high TRLs for mainly industry. Whereas the DCIT one is, I believe it is a new model. I hope it continues. That helps the industry and academia to work with each other at low TRL and make sure there is an outlet of the research into standards. And as we said, it is not always contribution to standards, but also aligning our research strategy with the standards. So we don't waste our resources doing things randomly. So more directed research is, I believe it is more, it is important. As Julie said, it doesn't have to be all the research directed research. We can have some curiosity-driven research that could find its use and application in 50 years' time. So we need to have a mix of all this.
Thank you, Rahim. And I will move on primarily because of time to ask the kind of the session. All of you mentioned in particular as part of the building blocks are facilities governed in the right way with the right balance between curiosity and strategically directed research with a direct pull through towards commercialization and standardization. So these are building blocks that currently exist and are being funded in the UK. But one of the key building blocks in that is also the further development of skills. And not only because and this should not be seen very often as it is seen in terms of purely academia as part of the graduate research or simply purely as a postgraduate, but what are the things that we are currently doing? What are the things you are currently doing in order to address this particular specific challenge in telecoms? I'll start with you, Rahim, referring also to the CDT, the Fort, the Center for Doctoral Training in Fort. Rahim?
Yeah, sure. No, thanks very much, Dritan. When a few years ago, 3 years ago, we realized the Tudor concept that we were doing unification between the space and terrestrial networks, radio, wireless side, the core network side, security side, AI, and etc. We realized that our PhD graduates are not exposed to all these various disciplines that is traditionally been taught in computer science or electronic engineering or in physics or in maths. So we said, let's set up a Center for Doctor Training. It's called Future Open Secure Networks, FORT in short. And we discussed this with our industry partners in 6GIC. We said that that's what we want to do. What do you think? And they said that this is the skills that industry needs to be aware of the graduates, to be aware and have expertise, at least in one of these areas, but have a good appreciation of other aspects. And the skill shortage is not only a UK problem, it is international problem. Because the system are evolving, the system become more complex with the AI, with the security, with the resilience, environmental sustainability. So in CDT, Center for Doctor Training 4, that started last October, officially funded by UKRI with more than 21 companies from representing all the ecosystem. And our partners is Queen's University of Belfast. We are working together. And it is to develop future graduates and future leaders, academic as well as in industry, to be industry conscious thinkers and leaders. Know and appreciate cybersecurity, networking, AI, for example, do things which is relevant to industry and society, that's important. Innovation that addresses the complex challenges that we are facing. Security by design from the very big, and security is not only just a software security or node security, but also hardware security as well as system security. If the system is secure, then that's the sort of approach we have to take. We realize that most of the graduates, they don't have a good system engineering knowledge. For example, they work on certain technology, they don't necessarily know how it would fit in with the system. And obviously carrying out excellent research, etc. What we discussed, we said that doesn't matter how many graduates we graduate from this CDT over the next 8 years, we need to make sure there is a pipeline of skills coming through. So for this reason, and as part of the leadership for the graduates, we want to start getting school pupils all the way to alumni to be involved in, for example, software design, coding and coding security, hardware, and doing many projects. So hopefully, if everything goes according to the plan, we are going to have thousands of the schools, the students would be interested in telecommunication, as well as being aware of the social, industry, academia requirements, and be multidisciplinary. And as our emphasis, in addition to technical training on the space, terrestrial, wireless, core network, etc., our industry partners said they would like graduates to know how to create impact from the research. Innovation to impact, responsible research and innovation. Standardization, again, it came out together with IPR, which we discussed that one. Leadership and media skills. How do you present the ideas, for example? So there is a combination of professional skills as well as the high technical skills on all aspects. And this is becoming a more or less, to anybody we work with nationally as well as internationally, a role model, and many other countries want to adopt the same sort of schemes because they are facing the same skill shortage of the future. So I stop at this stage unless there is a question that they can more.
Thank you, Rahim, and because I want to give a chance to answer some of the questions from the audience as well. Apologies. Harold, can you add something briefly around this?
Sorry, I get packet losses.
Yes, your connectivity is not the best today.
Yeah.
So I was saying very, very briefly, could you add something to this in 1.5 minutes?
I think very quickly to add that skills and upskilling is really crucial, given the geopolitical sort of situation now and the disruptions of supply chains and the fact that telecoms is a critical infrastructure, critical technology. We have to educate more people, but more importantly is we have to retain them in our system. We need to have our postdocs to stay, our PhD students to stay and drive through to commercialization and provide sort of input to the economy. That's very crucial, I think.
Thank you very much. And Howard, primarily on the standard space. Again, very, very brief, because I want to open to the floor.
I'll just put a link into the chat that everyone should be able to see. But within ETSI, we've identified this as a big problem across the whole of Europe, not just the UK. And we've been funding a whole set of new activities for creating online training resources. So I've created a number of videos that you can just go on the website, have a look at. And get in touch if you want more information. You know, we're here to support you.
Thank you very much. And Julie.
I was just going to add that we also are working on new tools to help people, especially people not working currently in telecoms. So, for example, tools that use large language models to build code to ensure that it's sustainable and accurate and so on. So there's new ways of approaching it in that regard as well.
Thank you. As you can see, there is a plethora and a depth. It's a breadth and a depth of work that the panelists today represent. That we are not doing justice in just a 1 hour webinar, but this is a taster before you go to MWC. So please, by all means, reach out and visit at MWC, or reach out and contact them whilst they are in the UK as well. I want to open to. We have received some questions from the floor. So there is one, which is, what are the biggest contributions that the wireless engineering industry can make to the proposed review of the UK, the proposed UK defence review that is being currently kind of proposed? If I start with it on Howard, and then maybe Julie and Alistair.
Okay, so again, one of the Etsy been working with is NATO, and I just put a new video up on the Etsy website about the way that NATO are increasingly using civilian standards. There is a lot of activity going on at the moment looking at 5G, 6G, non-terrestrial networks, and using the existing standards, obviously with maybe a little bit of extra security bits and pieces that the military may need. But that work is ongoing. It's happening right now.
Julie?
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of work on there's sort of dual use technologies. Specifically, there's a great interest in joint sensing and communications and how that can be used for defense purposes as well, essentially.
And Alistair, you wanted to add something?
Yes, I mean, certainly something we've worked on a lot over many years, and it's interesting to see how now it's important that the advances we've made in civilian technologies can actually be exploited in military, because clearly that's something that's going to be important in the near future, I guess.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And on a follow-up question, we have 2 or 3 more questions, and we'll answer as much as we have time for. Talking about standards, so picking up on the standards, which was a pervasive theme, where do you see the work of the DIFI, the DIFI consortium, and WAVE consortium for open standards in digital interfaces and modems for the convergence on satellite and telecoms, terrestrial, non-terrestrial? Where do you see this fitting with your work in the research space and in academia? Howard, do you want to start? And then Harold.
First of all, I would highly advise against anyone going off these days and forming industry-based consortium outside of existing standards bodies. We've done that many times in the past. We've had digital IF standards before. There's a plethora of them out there. ETSI created these ISGs that we've heard a little bit about in order that members and non-members can contribute and do something within a framework that can be continued long term. The problem with most consortia is that they seem a great idea when you form them. 3 or 4 years down the line, when you've written the standard, what do you do with it? So just be very careful if you're driving a consortium.
Harold.
I agree with Howard, completely agree. But where academia can really help is solving the major problems in making sort of versions of non-terrestrial networks with terrestrial networks work by, for example, looking at new waveforms, dealing with the new sort of the requirements on Doppler and sort of the physics essentially, and proposing solution going into the standards. But I think I agree. It should be sitting within the major bodies. But I also I'm chairing a NATO task group on optical wireless communications, and there's defense standards on SDA, for example, that try to promote and standardize modems there. I mean, there's certain interest groups in the defense industry that are looking for those standards that need to be more rapid, more quickly deployable. So there's that element to be looked at as well. And finally, I think it should all converge.
Thank you very much. I will pick one other question. And I'm trying to pick the questions we can answer in the time available, and it's probably a bit unfair, but that's the way I can think of it. So how relevant is automation? And by automation, I mean the processes involved in typically CI/CD and potentially CT continuous testing in automation field for innovation in telecommunications. Julie, do you want to start on this?
Okay, so the way I would say it is, I mean, there's obviously a spectrum of how they're influencing the telecommunications field, from requirements, what's needed from those kinds of systems to work, given the latencies that some of those systems need to react in, to actually the fundamental mathematics of control and so on that we can learn from. But I'm also seeing work specifically in smart grid systems where joint telecommunications and automation controlled systems are being designed so that they both can understand from each other what their parameters are and optimize. And we need that for things like to keep, for example, the power network stable if we have a smart grid.
Anything wants to add, or I move to the next question? On the proviso that I get a one minute in order to point people to MWC, to all of your pavilions. So Trevor, thank you very much for the question, but I will say, and I think you have 4.5 academics without counting me in. So I know what the answer to this question will be. We will attract many excellent PhDs, but it's hard to persuade based UK graduates to go and study for a PhD. I'm assuming in particular in this area. The CDT is a very valuable tool, but what else do we need to do to develop domestic skills at PhD level? 20-second answers.
Not enough.
I would say that we need to start, as I mentioned already, and that's what we are doing in CDT. We need to start from school and colleges.
Okay.
And tell them telecommunication is not just a screwdriver you keep going around and fixing TV. You know, it's not engineering. It's more than that. And as a colleague have said, it's got an AI in there, it's got a space communication, it's got terrestrial, and so many exciting aspects, as well as automation. Automation is part of 5G standards. I mean, network automation, as Julie said, vertical industry automation. But how many people know this? Definitely graduates or school level pupils and research, students don't know about these things. And that's part of the training that we can provide.
Thank you. I think we all wholeheartedly agree. There needs to be more dedicated funding, both for curiosity and driven research. Today, I want to thank all of the panelists today. As I said, captains of the research and development and standards, Howard, in the UK. And thank you for your very, very valuable time. This is, as I said, a taster of a very broad and also very deep work that the projects and the teams that these people represent across more than 35 universities in the UK are doing. And you will be able to effectively get deeper engagement with them in the UK Pavilion at Mobile World Congress, as well as contacting them through UKTIN or directly to go forward. We have answered all of the questions that we could answer at this moment in time, but I want to join you for all of you to join silently in an applause for our panelists, and to please again continue and to go into to visit all of these excellent activities, UK-based excellent activities in Mobile World Congress. Again, gentlemen and lady, thank you so much.